Hi everyone, my name is Christina. I'm the Family Programs Coordinator at the Vancouver Art Gallery. And here with me today we have Melissa. Hey Melissa.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Lee. I'm the Director of Education at the Vancouver Art Gallery. And do you want to say your name?
My name is Annabelle.
This is Annabelle. She's my daughter and she's 6 years old. Say hi from the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Hi from Vancouver Art Gallery.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you everyone here for joining us today. We're so glad that you could be here with us on Zoom. Of course, the best way to look and talk about art is when we're in the gallery. We can look up close at the paint or we can walk all the way around the sculptures. But at least for today, we're glad that we can be together here on Zoom to talk about artworks. So has everybody used Zoom before? By now, you may be a little bit more used to it. Let's take a look at how Zoom works. So you can see on this image, there's a green circle around the button that's called the chat button. And what you can do, you can click on that chat button, you can add your own ideas, you can add answers to questions. You can also just say hi right now. If you click on there, you can add a hello to Melissa and Annabelle and I right now. Thank you for joining us. So today's Art at Home session, it's a beautiful love story. It's the story of an artist who fell in love, suffered illness, great loss, but did so with resilience and joy. And she shows this resilience and joy through her artworks. And her name is Kenojuak Ashevak. Kenojuak's love of her home, her love of animals, and her love of creating artworks has brought so much joy to those who are lucky enough to see her artworks. And you know what? That can be you. If you visit the Vancouver Art Gallery's exhibition, The Tin Man Was a Dreamer, which is open till November 1st. Kenojuak was the first internationally famous artist of Inuit descent. She drew from her memories, from her feelings, and from her imagination. And Kenojuak's love and wisdom, it's expressed through her imagery, like I said, and it points to the importance of connection, that connection between humans and animals and the world around us. Kenojuak says, "When I first started a few lines on paper, my love, Johnny Bo, he smiled at me and said, 'Inum,' which means I love you. I just knew inside his heart that he almost cried, knowing that I was trying my best to say something on a piece of paper that would bring food to the family. I guess I was thinking of the animals and beautiful flowers that covered our beautiful untouched land." So in this session, we are going to be introduced to the incredible life and work of Kenojuak Ashevak. We are going to allow our hands to lead our minds. That's what Kenojuak says that she does. With speech sketching challenges that can free up our imaginations. And we're going to look closely at her drawing techniques, the ways that she creates texture. You can probably even see in this image right here, she creates texture and harmony and balance through using her imagination. We're going to talk more about that soon. And then at the very end, I'm going to show you how I combined our speed sketch challenges, our inspirations and new ideas from the session to create a unique drawing of my own that kind of shows my connection to animals and nature and the world around me, but using techniques like showing texture, harmony, and balance in the work as well. And you can too. So, sound good, Melissa and Annabelle? We are going.
Good.
Good. I'm glad to think. Excellent. All right, let's get to it. So I said this word a few times, Inuit. Have you heard the word Inuit before? You can see it here on the screen. And above it is syllabics, which is the Inuktitut language, Inuit. Inuit are Indigenous people that have communities in the northern area of what is now referred to as Canada, or the Canadian Arctic. And Indigenous, if you've heard this word before, it means the first people to live on the land. And did you know that the Vancouver Art Gallery, where Melissa and I work, is on Indigenous land, and it's on the land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I'm going to share a resource right now. And I'm not an Inuit person, so I'm not going to be teaching you about Inuit culture because cultures need to be taught by people from within that culture. But what I will be doing is sharing Kenojuak's voice. And with this link right here that I'm going to put in the chat, this is an organization called the Inuit Taprit Kanatami. So it's the national representational organization protecting and advancing the rights and interests of Inuit of Canada. And here. I'm just going to put the link in the chat. Through the Inuit Taprikanatmi, a project has been created called Inuit Nunugit Tamanangi. And you can hear stories and Inuit experiences and history told in Inuit voices. So I'm just going to put that in there. Make sure all can see it. So speaking of listening to Inuit voices, let's watch a video so Kenojuak Ashevak can introduce herself. And we want to say thank you to Anamiki C Productions for giving us permission to do so. And let's take a look.
Kenojuak Ashevak. How can I possibly describe in a few words this outstanding woman and artist?
Kenojuak Ashevak. Sunadakatok Kenojuak nak magsugyalan millo. Anwali ang namit. Dito na ko lumuli. Takto ko lumuli. Dito naman. Dito ako yung katalaw sa medyo tayo ko. Atok tatawa kitiwin. Ka kasi ani imang utong akala ko titiraw na ko siungo dunga isimat sa tiyo kasi tunga tay mang titok to ko sa pigiya si siungo dunga taman na ilita kaya ng ipigiyan la kaya lawa kubiya kaya kalat ilita kaya ko taksiman amalo ubanga.
Her first drawings were confident images of Arctic animals, birds, and flowers, filtered through her lyrical imagination. Only those who know it and who draw it understand the wealth of color in the Arctic landscape, the beautiful wildflowers, the sunsets, the northern lights. And only those who lived in that landscape could find the means to translate its spirit into art. Kenojuak's first images literally enchanted all who saw them.
To Kenojuak Ashevak, whose work ignites a stirring dialogue between Inuit and Western cultures, I say thank you.
Okay, so in this video that we just watched, Kenojuak Ashevak told us, she said, when I started drawing my artwork, I was given a pen and pencil and I just started to draw. I'd kind of move the pencil around the paper and started drawing. When animals or something like that, it's not really coming from the animal, but from how I feel. So we are going to do our first speed sketching challenges to kind of free up our hands and our imaginations. And what the challenge is going to be is drawing directly from your imagination, even with your eyes closed. So I want you to close your eyes. Think about an animal that comes to mind. And what makes you think about that animal? Think about an animal. What comes to mind and why? What's that connection to that animal? And now what we're going to do, keep your eyes closed. What we're going to do is take our, well, you might need to grab your pen and pencil or your pencil and your paper. And what we're going to do is keep our eyes closed and we are just going to draw, pouring our imaginations out onto the paper. And Melissa and Annabelle, you can join us. Everyone else can join us. Think about an animal, why that animal comes to mind. Maybe you want to think about, how the animal moves or the outline of the shape of the animal. Okay, ready? Eyes closed and draw. Okay, did everyone get a chance? So what you'll be able to see through my drawing that you can see right now, it doesn't look like anything from real life. I was just moving my pen as fast as I could on the paper. And what I was thinking about was a bee. I was thinking about ways that bees move. And I was thinking about sounds they make. Going, if I go to this side, bzzz, and moving and moving and moving. I'm going to keep this sketch. You can keep yours too, because we're going to look at some of the lines and shapes that we like about it. And we're going to use that for our artwork later on. Do you want to show us yours, Annabelle and Melissa?
Yep, so this is Annabelle's sketch. And Annabelle, what is this?
Bunny.
Yeah, so we did a bunny, and ours is more of a figurative drawing than your bumblebee, Christina. But I think everyone's going to be a little bit different.
Pour from their imagination onto the paper is going to be totally different. And Kenojuak says, drawing out of your imagination is a lot better to me anyway. What you see in your head is what you try to put in drawing. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Annabelle and Melissa. So do you want to take a look at Kenojuak Drawing? This is from a film that was made a long, long time ago in the 1960s, over 50 years ago, and it gave her international recognition. It made her known by a lot of people. Let's take a quick look at how she creates a drawing, and later on we're going to see how that drawing is made into a print.
The sun will bring light to the whole world. Birds of the darkness. What are thoughts? Are they like songs which just come with breath and are gone again?
Thank you. So we got to hear Kenojuak speak. We got to speak in her own language, Inuktitut. We got to see her drawing process, which was translated into English, words that she said. Now let's talk a little bit about her life. So as I said before, Kenojuak suffered many losses in life with incredible resilience and joy. When I say resilience, I mean that ability for communities or for families and people to spring back from really big challenges and become even more stronger. And in this film, Kenojuak says, our people have a very old saying, there's only one thing, to live to see the great day that dawns and the light that fills the world. Kenojuak was born in 1927 on South Baffin Island at a camp area known as Ariksik, as I said, in 1927. And she grew up traveling from camp to camp on South Baffin Island in Nunavik, where her ancestors were born. Her mother was Silaki and her father was Kenojuak, a strong hunter and fur trader and respected shaman, like a spiritual leader. Kenojuak was raised on the land in the traditional Inuit way. Like I said, moving to camp, and she says we had to get all of our livelihood from the sea and the land. So imagine all those incredible skills that her family had. She said we had warmth and comfort solely from the heat of our kulik, which is a stone lamp that burns seal oil. I want to note that this is a story of Kenojuak Ashevak's own life experiences. Inuit live in many different ways, have many different perspectives and values and passions. And Kenojuak was also born almost 100 years ago. And Inuit then and now carry and share cultural knowledge in ways that reflect this variety of lifestyles and passions and experiences. So when Kenojuak was 6 years old, while living on a camp, there were a lot of disputes between hunters and traders. She was living with her parents on the camp at the time. And like I said, her father was a powerful and respected man and often spoke his mind when necessary. And this caused a tension in the camp. And he was actually killed in a dispute and tossed into the sea with his possessions. So Kenojuak's family left the camp and never returned. And they traveled to Avujabik, now known as Northern Quebec. And they waited for the arrival of a Hudson Bay Company ship, which took them to Kinget. Kenojuak was very close with her grandmother, Kowessa, who she lived with for many years, and her grandmother taught her sealskin sewing skills. She learned how to sew with caribou sinew and make watertight seams. In 1946, Kenojuak was introduced to Johnny Bo. Their marriage was arranged between families, as was Inuit custom at the time. And when he first came to meet her, she pretended to be asleep. Eventually, she said she noticed his good-natured teasing, his tall stature, and during the first few weeks of our union, I was truly a reluctant young woman in Johnny Bo's company. I threw rocks at him whenever he approached me. He laughed good-naturedly. Eventually, I grew very fond of this kind gentleman. So like I said, a lot of her story is the love story. Their first son, Jemisi, was born in Kietko Camp, just east of Kinget, in 1947. And in 1950, Kenojuak contracted a disease. It was called tuberculosis. And it actually forced her to go to the hospital for a very, very long time. She was flown to a hospital in Quebec, and she spent 3 years there. And while she was in hospital, she learned some very difficult news that her 2 children had actually become very ill. She said that when she learned about this, Johnny Bo, in his letter to me, begged me not to grieve our 2 children, but to concentrate on regaining my health so that I might soon return to Cape Dorset, or what I can get. Suffering unbearable pain over this loss, I wanted to never bear children again. But you know what? Because of her incredible resilience, her incredible strength, ability to bounce back after difficult things, she went on to have and adopt many, many children, 14 in total. Some were adopted from different families, and such as Inuit custom, and some remained with her and Johnny Bo. So Kenojuak and Johnny Bo, they lived in Kinnegit in 1966 in order for their children to attend school, and they continued to work very closely together until Johnny Bo passed in 1972. And again, this was a great loss for Kenojuak, but she continued with her art. She continued to draw and create prints and express her love for Inuit culture. So many changes began in Inuit culture kind of around this time that Kenojuak and Johnny Bo were beginning to draw. And this was because of the Canadian government's policies. At the time, fur trapping wasn't bringing a reliable income. So carving and handicrafts were being promoted by people working for the government. And this had a great impact on what Inuit created, what parts of Inuit culture were encouraged and discouraged. So what was also lost. Inuit culture was shared with the rest of the world through choices made by art collectors, not just through Inuit voices themselves. And a man named James Houston and his wife, Alma, they traveled from the south and they established the first craft center. And they encouraged Kenojuak to draw with pencil. She said, I was afraid to begin the first drawings because I had no ideas in mind. The first time Samik gave me a piece of paper and asked me to start drawing, I asked him, what kind of drawing am I going to make? And he just told me, draw anything that comes into my mind. It can be anything. So why don't we take a look at Kenojuak's first drawing? So when she was in the hospital for 3 years, Kenojuak was given sewing materials to pass the time. When she returned from hospital, she had to relearn what her grandmother has taught her, how to sew with caribou sinew and sealskin. When she started working with indigenous materials again, she made dolls, kamiks, which are boots, and sealskin tapestries. And she kind of used some cutout designs. And it was through these design works that she developed her sense of composition and ways that she would create shapes and balance them. So let's take a look at this drawing. I'm gonna ask you a question. You can put the answer in the chat. What does this drawing remind you of when you take a look? What does it remind you of or make you think about? What do you think, Annabelle and Melissa? What does this remind you of?
Well, for me, it really reminds me of the ice in a way, the cracks and fissures along the ice. Do you see that, Annabelle?
Mm-hmm.
Or it kind of looks a little bit like a plant or like seaweed. What do you think?
This kind of look like a sheep, and this is like wave.
Waves, yeah, kind of like the ocean in a way.
Or something she like breathe air.
Yeah, I see that too.
Me too. Like you're completely connecting it to animals and nature, the world around us. Jazonda said, it reminds you of the wind. I like that idea, kind of that flowing movement that we see. And Catherine said a dragon head and peacock body and feathers. So I like that idea of feathers too, kind of coming out from the bottom there. Anyone else can enter their answers as well. But I can definitely see the idea of growth and movement from the flowing lines. And Charlotte saying a bunny hippopotamus having a drink in the river. I love that idea. So it's not just an animal from the real world. And you know what? Kenojuak said drawing from your imagination is better anyway. So it's something that's combined, as what Charlotte noticed. So you know what? Kenojuak Ashevak called this work a rabbit eating seaweed. So now that we know what the artist was thinking about, we might even see it totally different, or maybe not. All of our imaginations are different, aren't they? And Madison said it looks like a head attached to wings. So again, seeing that sense of flowing or things of different parts attached. a pig and a bluebird, still connecting it to animals that maybe wouldn't necessarily come together in your mind in other ways. So we are now going to look very closely at this work by doing another speed sketch challenge. So what we're going to do this time, we are going to glue our eyes on this drawing. We're going to use our pencil and paper and draw what we see without looking down at the paper. Sounds easy. It's a little bit harder than you think. So if you get your pencil and your paper ready, remember, we're going to glue our eye. Okay. You can see my screen here. So go ahead, glue your eyes to the artwork and go ahead and draw those lines. Okay. I don't know if anyone else got a chance to finish. You can look at my sketch here, and I think my sketch is proof that I didn't look down at my paper. I was just drawing with my eyes glued to the artwork. And I enjoyed actually just kind of tracing those lines with my eyes. We're going to do a little bit more of that later on. Did anyone else notice anything as they were sketching? I really noticed that flow of the lines coming together. You can also think about what would you even title your artwork. Mine, again, it doesn't look like anything realistic. I could title it anything, but I think about that flow and that movement. So let's take a look at the artwork that made Kenojuak famous all over the world. And Kenojuak says, there's no word for art. We say it is to transfer something from the real to the unreal. I'm an owl, and I'm a happy owl. I like to make people happy and everything happy. I'm the light of happiness, and I am a dancing owl. Just reading that makes me so happy. So what words would you use to describe this owl? Take a look at it here. It was made quite a long time ago, 1960. What do you think, Melissa and Annabelle? Is there any words you would use to describe this owl?
Mm-hmm.
What word would you use, Annabelle?
Big feather owl.
The big feather owl, not just any owl. What does everybody else think? What word would you use to describe this owl? A peacock owl, Catherine says. I was just thinking of like a very proud looking owl with a stance and the way that it's looking right at the viewer. And Sherry noticed like a joy is a great way to describe that owl. And the dancing owl, and Nancy noticed as well. So seeing movement, right? We see the way that the claws at the bottom are kind of shaped like this, so you get that sense of dancing or owl. Now, speaking of kind of acting out like what I was doing there, Madison noticed it looks like a magical owl. Well, you know what? Kenojuak calls this the Enchanted Owl. So very similar to what you're saying, Madison. And as well as what everybody else is saying. A huge peacock owl, Charlotte is saying, colorful, and a very happy owl, Fabiola said. So again, the colors bring the joy. In that sense, a lot of people are noticing that sense of peacock or spread out feathers. Now, you know what? As Kenojuak mentioned, she herself feels to be a dancing or a happy owl. So does everyone else want to know what it feels like to strike a pose like an enchanted owl? Shall we give it a try, Annabelle and Melissa? Shall we strike a pose? If you were to use your body, your face, your hands and legs to act out this owl, what would you do? I want everyone to give it a try. I'm going to give it a try. And Melissa and Annabelle, you can as well too, if you like, or Melissa, you can as well too. So if you think about using your face and your arms and your hands in different ways to recreate this pose, what would you do? Oh, Annabelle's doing it for us already.
So you're trying to be like an owl, right, Annabelle?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one. I'll go like this.
We'll see Melissa's too.
Mine would be more like this because I'm kind of trying to do the big plumage like the owl.
That extension of the owl's face. For me, I think of the owl's face and I think of the claws, and I think of the owl looking straight at the viewer, very attentive and alert as well. So kind of using your body to act out an artwork is a great way to pay close attention to what you notice about it and to express it to others. Kenojuak says the owl did not have any particular significance, but every time that I sat down to draw, an owl always seemed to come. So this work was actually made into a postage stamp. So people all over Canada and all over the world could see Kenojuak's drawings. And her youngest child, Selaki, said she wasn't interested in keeping any of her drawings or prints, only the Enchanted Owl. She used to say it was her favorite, although she never thought it would become famous work of art. She never really talked about being famous. It didn't really change her. She was always kind and friendly. And that was Selaki Ashevak. So if we look at this artwork, you can see a little bit of the ways that she's creating texture. And one of the ways that I like to look at texture, or the way the artists use their pencil or brush, is by using my own hand to kind of recreate those actions. So when I look at part of maybe the feather of the owl, I see these kind of little ... dots. You can do it too if you like. And I look at the body of the owl and I see kind of bigger, more spread out dots, still lots of them. But even the difference in the size of the dots, how spread out they are, creates a totally different texture. Or if you look at kind of the tail feather, she's kind of doing these line strokes to create a texture. So this is part of the technique that she used. And we're going to look at some more artworks where she uses different techniques, different ways of using her pencil to create texture. So let's look at another artwork and let's think about imagining a possible story that it's telling. This is an artwork again from 1960, very early on in her printing career. If this was a story, what would you name it? Take a look. Who are the characters? What actions are happening? What's going on here?
Oh, okay. Annabelle says,
The Feather Owl Story.
Okay. Why Feather Owl Story?
Because it has an owl that has big feather in it.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to say the Feather
I love it.
Owl
You're focusing
Story,
on the characters,
Christina.
some other animals that are important to Kenojuak Ashevak. What does everybody else think too? The bird story. So we're seeing these figures as birds, even if they might not look exactly like birds that you've seen before. I also see the action of, it looks like one figure is giving a pot to another. So it makes me think of maybe it could be a lamp, like the pulley that Ashevak talked about. And it could also be about family. There's kind of like this connection. We see smaller figures and bigger figures as well. And so Kenojuak says that some of these pictures come from things that have happened this summer and some from more distant places, which are harder to talk about. But then life itself is not easily understood. She said there was a time when all of the world lay in darkness and the raven was the only bird. And like the raven, the world was black. But then the owl came and the light, White Light himself, took possession. For the first time, birds and men were able to walk upright, and others too. And although Kenojuak did not usually draw traditional Inuit legends in her work does show us her knowledge of the interconnectedness of all living things, which is an important Inuit belief. We've talked about it in other Art at Homes as well, if you've joined us for those. So Fabiola also noticed the bird family, this idea of a family coming together. And the penguin men meet the Enchanted Owl and friends. So again, an idea of friendship, of meeting, and of coming together. Let's take a look at an image of Kenojuak. She's creating a print along with the printmaker, Kavavo Manumi. So Manumi it was a very well-known carver and printmaker and artist himself. And stone cut printmaking began in Kinnegate in this sort of a style in 1958. It was inspired by techniques that James Houston learned when he traveled to Japan, and he trained in a carver these techniques a very, very, very long time in Inuit culture. But imagine the physical labor involved in stone cut printing. So you can't see it here. We're going to see it in a minute. The carver would have to select the stone, transport it, carry it, sand it down, and carve it exactly to all of those kind of techniques, all of those pencil marks that the other artist created. So it's really a lot about collaboration, right? The artist has to trust the carver, and the carver has to trust the artist as well. Where Monumi did the stone carving and Kenojuak did the drawing. Now this work is called 6-part harmony. Have you ever heard of that word before, harmony? It's kind of like a pleasing arrangement, or sometimes I'll think of harmony as in music, voices coming together to create something all together. So can you see here, she's calling it 6-part harmony. What about this makes this kind of give us that sense of harmony? I'm glad you think it's beautiful, Kaylee. What about it kind of makes it seem harmonious, that idea of harmony or things coming together? Another word we could use for harmony, things is balancing. So if we look at this, you can see what kind of makes it look balanced. Leah noticed a circle, so that idea of harmony, all of the things coming together, fantastic. I don't know, Melissa and Annabelle, if you noticed anything that kind of looks like a balance or a harmony of different parts coming together.
Yeah, I think because you have one bluebird on each side and one wolf on each side, it kind of creates a symmetry or harmony. Do you think that so too, Annabelle?
No.
No? What do you think?
I think it's called harmony because it's all rainbow.
Because of the colors? So Annabelle thinks it's more to do with
I love that. And I love that you have
creating
your own
harmony.
idea, different than your mom's. Stephanie noticed the repetition of the shapes. So similar shapes being repeated over and over again. Fantastic. Catherine noticed some type of a hairy fish in the middle. So again, it's interesting that Kenojuak is showing us from her imagination, because she doesn't really, it's about how she feels about the animal, not what she sees in real life. And Fabiola also noticed the colors like you did, Annabelle. So this idea of different pieces, the shapes, the colors, the circle, the form of everything coming together to create that harmony. And Charlotte said it looks like they're singing. I never even thought of that before. So if we look at it, I don't know what made you think of that, Charlotte, but as soon as you said singing, I thought of, oh, their mouths are open. So maybe they're all coming together in song. That's fantastic. So this print, if we look up close at those techniques, those drawing techniques, where we use our pencil in the air, if you look up close at how she's creating the lines to give texture, aha, and Madison just noticed texture as I said it as well. Look at the way, imagine how she would use her pencil to create texture, maybe in like the animals at the very bottom. And Leah's noticing the happiness in the animals. Definitely bright colors make us think of happiness too. And Kenojuak talks about how she wants to express her happiness in her work. But imagine all of those tiny, tiny little pencil strokes had to be carved into a stone. Leah noticed that line technique, kind of like what I'm outlining here. So this work is very well known for the difficulty of the stone carving. And you know what? Do you want to get a chance to see how a stone is carved and how one of Kenojuak's drawings were made into a print? Leah says yes. I hope everyone else agrees. Let's take a look again at this film that was created in 1963. We want to thank the National Film Board for allowing us to share it with you as well. Let's take a look at the way the carving is done and then what is created.
Iola can really cut the blocks. He's a hunter and he uses his harpoon and rifle skills. Happy to cut blocks for the cooperative, but he's much happier to hunt, and the hunt is still the largest part of him. Life is easier now. We haven't forgotten when the hunt failed, how people suffered and disappeared. Now, between the hunts, we make our pictures about the hunt and life around us. Kenojuak, the one employed by us to deal with the people from the south who desire our shadow prints. Gupta says the colors work better for him when the winter's cold has gone. The colors move better. In the past, we've carved in stone and drawn on ivory. But this is a new idea. A piece of paper from the outside world as thin as the shell of a snowbird's egg.
They're gonna like trace the print and then after you do the rock.
Shiva. Una siya ko kabinala with the view. Amalo una ija kajugo wali ditaning.
He asked me why did I choose to draw this one. Achoo, I said. I don't know. But my husband says the spirits must have whispered in my ear. My name, Iola's, who cut the block, and the igloo mark of our cooperative.
Thanks for helping us share that, Melissa. So again, this is a film that is from quite a long time ago, but it's really fabulous to actually get to see that process of how hard it is to stone cut and how incredible that work is. That's what I loved about it. Did anything stand out to you? Anybody else about that film? Melissa and Annabelle, did anything stand out to you?
It felt really amazing to be able to see how much work it was to do a stone print. And I really like the part where Johnny Bo was just as excited to see the print as Kenojuak Ashevak when it was finally done. What about you, Annabelle? Did you see anything that you liked in the video?
I like
What?
I like the bit that when he coloring the drawing.
Okay, so Annabelle likes the drawing part when you kind of open it up and then you can see the paper being traced out.
Oh, I love that part too. You see it actually becoming a print. Madison said the carving was cool, that process. And Charlotte, I love this part as well. The part rolling that ink onto the stone. It's the ink has been perfectly prepared and is the perfect thickness. And like they said in the film, it works better when it's not as cold out because the ink can move a little bit more easily. Fantastic. Well, you know what? Let's look at one more Kenojuak Ashevak artwork. And this artwork is called Loons Protect the Owl. It's from 2002. Oh, Fabiola is saying the carving was your favorite part too. Good, I'm glad you got to see it. So again, this is a stone cut print, so it would have been the same process, although it's a different artwork. So let's actually, you know what? You can actually see this artwork in the art gallery right now, again in the exhibition, The Tin Man Was a Dreamer. So until November 1st, you can see it in real life. So again, let's think about that idea of kind of a harmony and a balance. And first I'm going to answer Leah's question. Printmaking is definitely extremely time consuming. It sounds like you've done it before, Leah. Is that soapstone? It's actually a quarried stone. So a soapstone was often traditionally a material that Inuit would carve, possibly used in many different ways. Soapstone is very, very easy to carve, but breaks very easily. So I would guess that this is a stronger type of quarried stone, obviously a very heavy stone as well. So if we come back to this artwork here, Loons Protect the Owl, can you see ways that balance or symmetry is kinated? What does everybody think? We used the word symmetry before. We were talking about harmony, all the pieces coming together, like the colors and the shapes, balance, where both sides kind of are balancing. But now we have exact symmetry. So symmetry is where both sides are exactly the same. And we can see that here. We can also think about those different mark making techniques, how she used her pencil. So if you look for a section, you can kind of use your pencil to see where she's created. I see kind of like layered tiny dots. I don't know what everybody else sees. Of course, some bigger shapes, but I really see that texture with the layered tiny dots. And like we said, we see that perfect balance and symmetry. So according to the book that's right behind me, it's called Kenojuak Ashevak, Life and Legacy. She often used cardboard patterns. So just as she had in her sewing, by placing them on paper and tracing around them. She'd often create mirrored, exactly symmetrical objects that are arranged around a central subject. And she learned this from another artist who said if she used templates, everything would be straight. So in this work, we can see how she really wanted to get that exact symmetry and straight kind of balance with the lines. But let's also talk about her color choices here. We talked about it a little bit earlier with the Enchanted Owl. So what do you notice about these colors? What are the first things that come to your mind when you see these colors? What do you think about these colors, Annabelle?
I think about the rainbow.
The rainbow, okay. And I also see the really kind of bright colors that remind me of the sun, right? Like the owl is orange and red. It's kind of like the sun.
Oh, fantastic. So again, that brightness, the rainbow kind of, and the brightness, like the sun, also giving us, often artists will use bright, bright colors to express a happiness too. Fabiola saying you notice the position of the birds. You can say a little bit more about that if you like, Fabiola. Remember what this artwork is called, Loons Protect the Owl. So of course, then we think about the difference in the positions. The birds on the top are positioned in a different way than the birds at the bottom. Catherine noticed the very bright colors and the opposites. So the dark and light colors. So I like that, Catherine, as you notice in maybe the birds at the top, they have the dark blue, which is the exact opposite color of those very bright oranges. So when you have opposite colors together, they really make each other burst and really stand out. Fantastic. So Kenojuak says, I do lay the colors out in a certain way. I make sense of the colors. I'll place two colors side by side that I feel would go well together, lined up in a way that is pleasing to my sense of color. It's not as if something is going to come to me completely out of the blue in terms of color, although it might in terms of shape or form. So now we can think about, there are parts that she's planned in her work, the color choices, and there are those parts that just come to her that she improvises as she creates. So late in life, Kenojuak was often asked when she would stop drawing, to which she responded, this is my job and my love. I cannot imagine life without art. And in the film that we saw, in another part of it, she mentions, I know the world between here and our camp. That is all I know. But you know what? By 2004, she had traveled all over the world. She had been to Holland, to Korea, the United States, to Ottawa, to Toronto, to Germany. And that's just to name a few of the places that she went that wanted to celebrate her life and her work. Her daughter describes the time that they traveled together. She said, we went to the McMichael, an art gallery, several times, and I will always remember one lady who came up to my mother with tears in her eyes. I was amazed. I'd never seen anyone so happy to meet my mom. I said, Mom, she was even crying. And she said, I get that from a lot of people. I think people, when they met her, they cried because they loved her art so much. And they said that when they bought a print and put it up on their wall, it seemed to light up the whole place. I know someone else mentioned right at the beginning of the session that they had a print in their space as well. And hopefully it does the same to light up the whole space. In 2014, 1 year after her death, a campaign started to build a new cultural center in Kinget, and it was named the Kenojuak Cultural Center. It opened in September of 2018, so not that long ago. So it's a studio space for artists to work, a gathering space for elders and community members, and it's also the first purpose-built exhibition space. So although Tlingit artists have become very famous all over the world, often their works are created and then shipped to art dealers or to galleries and collectors around the world rather than seen by their own community. But because of the Kenojuak Cultural Center, generations will be able to learn from their grandparents and great-grandparents and tell their own stories through art. And Kenojuak was always mindful of the next generation, thinking about her children and the future and her responsibility to provide for them as best she could. And as she said, to make something beautiful. And she did so with resilience and joy and love. She's been awarded so many honors that I can't even list them all right here, but I will put up a slide. So just so you can get a sense of the enormity of honors that she's received. We saw in the video her receiving the Governor General's Award in 2008. Now, what we're gonna do now, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to show you how I use some different ideas about harmony, balance, texture to create my own drawing inspired by what we've learned today. So I'm also thinking about my connection to nature. Earlier, I was thinking about, remember I said a bee, thinking about the way that a bee moves. Here I tried to freehand draw the bee to make it symmetrical. It was pretty difficult. So what I'm using here is parchment paper. It's kind of like tracing paper, but I'm using that so I can fold it over and trace what I've drawn on the back. So those are the lines that I had from my very first speed sketch challenge, but I decided to make them dot, 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 so it looks like the path of a bee. Then I unfolded it. And what I'm gonna do now is trace the whole thing onto like a good copy piece of paper. So here you can see that's how I'm gonna be able to achieve that idea of symmetry. It's not exact, it's not perfect, but I am going to get that sense of kind of balance and symmetry. You can also see the areas where I was thinking about drawing techniques to create texture. Some of the lines in the wings of the bee are kind of the little squiggly marks to show the texture in the hairy part of the bee. And what I've done, once I've kind of filled it in the outline with black, I'm going to think about my color choices. I'm going to think like she does of what colors go beside each other. So I was thinking about, I see bees a lot when I'm in the parks, and they're kind of, often they're on those little clover flowers and they have like a purple to them. So I wanted to use purple for my kind of clover-like flower. And then I wanted to use a green. I wanted to balance that deep purple color at the top of the drawing with something similar, so I chose blue. And then like I mentioned before, beside that dark blue, I put in a pop of orange because they're opposites. And then same with pink, I added a little bit of red, very, very close to the green part to make those colors pop. Then I have my bright color to bring your eye right to the center of the main feature. And you know what? I could keep going on and on to continue to create better balance or think about colors in different ways. And Kenojuak says the way that she knows that her artwork is done, she said, I'll look at it for a while, and then my mind comes up with new things to further fill the space and also further beautify the image, to enhance the image, and then so I'll add to it. As my imagination keeps working, I lay down more parts until all of a sudden I look at it and say, well, it's complete. Well, thank you everybody for noticing. And thank you everybody for talking along with us for this session and for your ideas. Thank you, Annabelle, for your excellent ideas and the way that you looked at the art with us. It was so much fun. And this is the time when I'm going to say goodbye, and we're going to let you take your turn to create a work that's thinking about harmony and balance and connection to animals and nature. What's that animal that's important to you? And you can use the parchment paper and fold in half like I did, or you can try to experiment in different ways with your own, with different kinds of tracing paper.
And
so, yeah.
I just wanted to say, and also don't forget to visit us. Vancouver Art Gallery is open, and if you want to come and see some of Kenojuak Ashevak's drawings in person, you can come this weekend. You can come today.
Yep, you can go to the website and pre-book your tickets. I also am happy to get feedback and ideas and suggestions. I'm going to put my email right into the chat right here. Catherine, you asked to share the steps. I absolutely can do that as well. I can post them in a document or possibly send them directly to you if you want to send me an email, Catherine, so you can really see those steps lined out. We do it in a speedy way so we can you can see it quickly and it doesn't take too long. But as for now, we will say goodbye, and I want you to stay connected to each other and to the world around you through art. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Annabelle.
Goodbye, everyone. Annabelle.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you at the next Start at Home.